For the last decade and a half, Bitcoin and the entire crypto community has been waiting for a few very specific things to happen. While we've been waiting for this, we've been shamefully counting the days. We wanted things like aggressive actions against decentralization to stop. We wanted government clarity around regulation concerning stablecoins, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. And we finally really wanted people to stop referring to crypto as the NFT monkey picture crazy movement. So luckily, since 2024, this narrative has changed significantly. So Congress passed the Genius Act, which allowed stablecoin regulation to finally be put into play. And since then, we've seen many equity names start to pile on digital assets onto their balance sheets. So if you've been catching up with the news, you've heard about AI, inflation, and stablecoins. Basically nothing else. Chances are, if you've heard about these things, you don't live under a rock. I wanted to take this time in this video to walk you guys through exactly what's happening and what you can do to prepare for what's coming. All right, so the main thing I wanted to talk about in this video was that how all the academics who are claiming to understand the best interest of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and all the people who write papers or the academics, they're all wrong. They're not just wrong, but they're actually stupid. So I wanted to look at this paper from NYU in the period of 2013 to 2021. One of the best professors in our finance department at my university, they gave me this paper as I led the crypto sector head of our trading program. She claimed to me that Bitcoin was not a hedge against inflation, a store of value, or a currency mechanism that serves without a government due to one thing. If we read this paper where she was drawing all of her claims from, all it is assessing the time frame of the 8 years between 2013 and 2021, which were both significant halving periods for Bitcoin itself. And they just claim that the 3 months return with an annualized volatility doesn't seem to go down. So people claim that there's things that are too volatile to fail, and that something that has a lot of volatility and liquidity moving through it will actually serve as something worthwhile for an investment. We see this with the credit yielding bond market, and we see this in many other markets that United States participates in. But for the volatility claim on Bitcoin, this is just showing you this graph right here that doesn't seem to draw down over time. If this chart drew down over time, it would mean that people are becoming less skeptical and there's less uncertainty about Bitcoin. So when volatility is high, uncertainty is very high. People are pricing in the estimated movements that they expect to see happen. So I want to address how this paper has moved from that time it was published till now. So here I've pulled up the actual volatility for Bitcoin, and from the left to right, we have 2013 to today, 2025. So the paper stopped right about here, and ever since then, we can see that volatility has significantly decreased. So it was about the time frame of the paper. The academics only serve with the data that they're given at that specific time. So if the community can find a way to outdo what they've written on the paper, they're just simply wrong. They're just people who are just writing a paper. So this chart confirms how their claim about volatility is wrong. All right, so now this is a more recent NYU paper being written, and this is where they claim that we formally clarified Bitcoin's economic significance in solving the double spending problem without a centralized entity. So just from this to the last paper alone, in the first paper, they claimed that it was not a successful currency underneath no government superstitions. So this paper has directly inversed what they just wrote, and we can see with the data and volatility that all their claims about why it can't serve as those three things it proposes itself to be in the white paper, they're just wrong. So to pause here for a second, what we've talked about is how NYU completely switched their academic perspective on Bitcoin in the last couple of years. So who else is also doing this? I want to take this time to start to look at the JPMorgan Chase Outlook for 2026, where they formally disclosed their expectations for the future of the United States economy. So it's a very lengthy report, but I wanted to skip over all the semantics and just bring you guys to part 3. In part 3, they claim to be preparing for a structural shift. So what does this actually mean with inflation being involved in that sentence, and how can we actually prepare for what they're talking about as well? Well, they outline a couple ways of how they claim to have different risk to reward metrics on their desks. So their allocation is mainly set based on risk management and the firm's total exposure. But if we look at the charts that they've provided to us, they are counteracting similar and different proposals made by different academics in the past, claiming that it can't be compared to digital gold, Bitcoin can't be used as this hedge against inflation, and all these different things that we've seen in some of the papers we've been talking about, and that I'm sure that you guys have heard in recent news articles. So to look at their paper, what I have been hiding behind is that this is from the subject of the paper called Think Fragmentation, Not Globalization. They say that in many ways, Bitcoin is a case study in weighing risk and reward, and they show a 5-year annualized percentage return against the percentage of volatility. So they compare Bitcoin to gold, and you can see that gold has about a 10 to 15% return and a 10 to 15% volatility. So on the right side, they provide Bitcoin at around a 60% vol and a 60% return. So just the fact that they've included this at all in their outlook shows that they have taken that perspective switch. The foundations of the cryptocurrency community were always built on decentralization, using Bitcoin as a store of gold, using it as a medium of exchange, or using it as a store of value. We can finally see that certain commercial banks, institutional and lending investment bankers are now starting to switch that narrative, write papers about it, and now deliver it to a public audience. So this, in combination with the Bitcoin Act sitting in Congress and the Genius Act being passed last year, they're all very optimistic things that surely draw us away from the monkey picture craze NFT movement. All right, to reintroduce a familiar concept from my channel, this is the pull-to-par effect of Bitcoin. So traditional credit yielding bond markets have a pull-to-par effect that through maturity will either appreciate or depreciate the value back to par value. And I wanted to overlay that on Bitcoin to give a visual interpretation of how you can dollar cost average into an inflationary future, as outlined in this video by JP Morgan's Outlook and by the academic papers from NYU. So to look at Bitcoin, we need to justify why it actually has a pull to par effect instead of me just saying that it has one. So I want to address the difficulty of Bitcoin. You can compare the difficulty of Bitcoin to the mining of gold. You have to go out with a shovel and a pan, and you have to actually physically mine the gold to be able to sell it. So similar to that, Bitcoin has a computation effect where the algorithm that computes new Bitcoins is relative to the energy scarcity that's put in the algorithm from wherever you plug in the computer to. This is pretty much the mining of gold that happens. And I want to justify the pull to par by showing the electrical cost of Bitcoin. So over here, we can see Bravos Research, they made an interpretation of the electrical cost of Bitcoin appreciating over time and serving as a fair value boundary that it can never fall below. So this chart has never fallen below the true electrical cost of Bitcoin, making this an accurate barometer for the lowest possible price Bitcoin can possibly fall to. And this price is supported because of the mining and the mining institutions that currently exist. Wrapping things up, we can see that JP Morgan and academics like NYU have finally changed their perspective on the crypto community and Bitcoin and what it does and its purpose overall. So if all this was confusing to you, it is to everybody. You never had to understand how a car engine worked to drive the car, and I don't think you have to understand the entire Bitcoin white paper to accept that each new token is a form of energy scarcity that's crystallized permanently over time. That narrative, it's what made the academics change their mind, and it's hopefully what should make you change your mind as well. If this is your first time getting into it, my name is Dylan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.